In the early hours of June 13th, 2022, a blue Ford Transit van had been stolen from Pudsey, West Yorkshire. We can't say for certain who specifically stole the vehicle, but it would eventually end up in the hands of 15-year-old Jack Simpson, who had been on bail at the time for a string of nighttime burglaries. It would be this specific incident, the robbery of the van, that would be the start of a series of events that would eventually lead to the tragic death of 3 people. As the morning turned into the afternoon, the van in question was reportedly used in a daytime robbery, but it isn't clear whether Jack had been the suspect in that specific incident. Other than that, we don't really know the van or Jack's movements because there isn't in-depth reports about those steps. But I'm pretty sure if you used your imagination, you could kinda come to some conclusion. Although it's hazy as to whether Jack had been in the vehicle throughout the day, it's confirmed that as the evening drew closer, he'd been the driver of the van carrying 2 passengers. His friends, 18-year-old Bradford native Caden Leadbeater, and a person who hasn't been named or aged by the police. By now, the van had been reported stolen by the unsuspected victim, and police had received reports that the blue Ford Transit had been used in a daytime robbery, so they were on the hunt for the perpetrator or perpetrators. At around 10:40 PM, police would cross paths with the van in question in the Moorlands Road area of Bradford, and the chase was on.
Bradford Road, suspected outstanding stolen from van. What's 19 for authority, please? Take back your class and dog. On Whitehall Road, got the wrong side of roundabout, still safe to continue. Yes. It's gone wrong way.
Under the initial place sequence.
After taking police on a pursuit, reaching 70 mph in 30 mph zones, driving through temporary red lights, and eventually crossing the Chain Bar roundabout in Bradford on the opposite side, the blue Ford Transit would lose police momentarily. But at what cost? Sadly, the cost of life. Witnesses say the van attempted to make no move after they signalled for it to slow down, or better yet, try and get out of the way somehow. And although members of the public did try their best to stop the inevitable crash, their efforts failed. 49-year-old Simon McHugh had been travelling home after an evening out. His taxi driver, 28-year-old Sohail Ali, struck up a general conversation with him just about life as they made their trip, but the conversation would be cut short. The van would sadly collide with the taxi, sending it quite literally into the air. Witnesses say again the van made no attempts to even hit the brakes. Emergency services had already been close to the scene, and when they eventually made it to the crash site, both Sohail and Simon were sadly pronounced dead at the scene. Jack, Caden, and the unnamed friend were badly injured and were rushed to hospital, but Caden wouldn't make it either. He would also go on to be pronounced dead. The police investigation, if you hadn't guessed it by now, wasn't complex at all. Given the fact that this happened only a couple months back, really puts into perspective how this all happened in the matter of moments. To no surprise then that Jack was charged in relation to this case, but it wasn't murder, it wasn't manslaughter, rather 3 counts of causing death by dangerous driving, which compared to the 2 previous charges carries a slap on the wrist in terms of a jail sentence. And of course, if you've read the title of this video, then you'll know what sentence was handed down. In early court hearings, Jack would go on to plead guilty to the charges that were brought against him, and he was handed a 6-year prison sentence for killing 3 people on that fateful night in June. 3 years will be served in jail, and 3 years he'll be out on license. The now 16-year-old was said to have showed remorse for his actions. The judge and even the families of the victims did express that this was true, although they were angered by the sentence that was given. In court, Simon's mother spoke to Jack directly, asking him to take this as a life lesson, and when he comes out of jail to try and get his life back on track. She continued that her son doesn't have a life anymore, but that Jack should use his for good. She finished by saying that she felt some sympathy towards him she had about his upbringing, and that his parents weren't really parents to him. She even told him that when he's eventually released, the offer was there to live with her so she could bring him up and teach him the correct way to act.